Hello everyone. I'm Jadupati, and I'm the convener of Research Scholars Forum. Welcome all of you in our first talk of post-PhD opportunities. We are organizing a series of talks to address the topic. Today, for our first talk, it's my pleasure to invite Professor Hirish Kumar Pal from Department of Physics, IIT Bombay with us. Before I give the space to Professor Pal, I am conveying some general instruction to all the participants. Please unmute. Please mute yourself to reduce the background noise. And if you want to talk or to ask any question, please raise your hand, which you will get in the participant window box. I think a sign will be there to raise your hand. Or you can write also your question in the chat box with your name and department name. We will take your question to the speaker. With this, let me introduce Professor Hirish Kumar Pal. Again, it's a great pleasure to have him as the first speaker of this series. Professor Pal is a theoretical physicist who has done his master's from IIT Bombay. He graduated from the University of Florida, US in 2012. Then he moved to Georgia Tech, Atlanta, US, followed by University Paris, France, and University of Houston, US, for the postdocs. He has joined IIT Bombay as an assistant professor in the Department of Physics in 2018, and since he has been there. Today he is going to talk on some thoughts on post-PhD options in academia, and I think I will over to Sir, and I thank him very much for joining and accepting our invitation. Sir, please continue.
Sure. Thank you, Jadupati, for the wonderful introduction. And I must say that it's a very nice idea that you guys are arranging a webinar like this. Of course, I would have rather preferred a face-to-face, one-to-one interaction, which is always much better, but you know, things are really weird and we have to somehow fit in. So here we go. So we'll try as best as we can to do it online. So as I wrote in the abstract, when Jadupati asked me to give this presentation on what could be some of the options after you guys are done with your PhD, the first thing that came to my mind is I think any kind of general presentation or talk at this point is pretty useless. So I think up to PhD, like after your BTech or Masters, when you're trying to get into a PhD program, there are some nice structures, like there is a certain kind of exam you have to give, certain kind of applications that you have to go through if you want, whether in India or abroad, and everything is much more structured. However, post-PhD, once you are done with your PhD, that structure is not there anymore to that extent. It's much more fluid and much more individual. And that makes sense in a way because things are very specialized now. I mean, by the time you are a doctor in your specialty, you have earned some very specialized knowledge and you are going forward with it. So in that sense, trying to attempt to give you a general presentation across departments and across disciplines is really useless, honestly. So that's what I thought. I would just give you one slide of the minimum basic points which will carry over across disciplines and in almost all departments. And then I would go to specific questions. So the best way to make use of this webinar is for you to ask questions, and I will try my best to answer. Now, before I really get into the actual, things that I wanted to say, first, you should know that I am very limited in what I will be able to say today. Because to begin with, as Jadupati mentioned, after I did my MSc from here back in 2006, then I left and then I returned late 2018. So I spent 12 years abroad, and that's where my PhD and postdoc, everything happened. So my experience post PhD is largely, first of all, it's in academia purely. I don't have any experience outside of that. And secondly, that experience is largely catered to the requirements of something that you can have abroad. I'm not that familiar with how things work out in India, although in the last year and a half after I joined, I have learned a few things. So maybe I can chip in a bit. But mostly what I'll be able to help you with is options in academia post PhD and options mostly abroad. Okay. All right. So before I get into the real questions and the real meat of today's webinar, just one slide on some general ideas about what actually how it works out once you graduate after your PhD. And sorry for this Dropbox here; it keeps popping up, and I have no way to stop this. So we'll have to deal with this. Okay, so here is the general flowchart. This is where all of you are right now. By the way, can you see my pointer? Can someone please? Okay, good. Someone raised hand, so it means probably yes. Good. So this is where you are, and post PhD, practically you have three options. You can either go into, you still want to stay in academia, but you want to stay in academia where you are mainly concerned with teaching, but not with so much active research. So that would be something like getting a position in a college or some state universities, which are not that much focused into research, but rather teaching. So that is something that you can immediately go post PhD. You don't really need to get any more experience. The other option is people who want to go into non-academia, for example, industry, entrepreneurship, and other stuff like that, even NGOs and anything that your heart desires. This would be the right point to exit. However, if neither of this appeals to you and you really want to go through the academic channel where you finally want to get a faculty position with research, something like, for example, a position at a place like IIT or a university where both teaching and research are at par. So then typically you will have to go through these postdoctoral experiences. Now, having said that, as I said, it is very hard to generalize. Most of my experiences are related to my own subject. As far as I understand, having talked to my friends and my peers, these days almost all subjects require some kind of postdoc experience. However, there are exceptions. I have known people in geology, in statistics, and in some other subjects where they have been able to directly jump from there to there. So get a position even in a research university right after doing PhD. Now, at the very beginning, what I would suggest is, having talked to them, even if your subject allows for something like that, I would suggest, oh, this is really irritating. Okay, I would suggest that even if you, let's say you're extraordinary and your subject does allow this jump directly from here to here, I would suggest don't do that. It's always nice to have more experience in research and then join a position where you are asked to lead an independent team, independent research team, because it just lets you have more options. Okay, so if you are already quite smart and you are independent here and you know what you want to do here, unless you have pressing needs like family or something that you need to get a permanent job, it's always a good idea to spend some time, at least do one postdoc and come or join whatever position you want. Okay, that's a general feedback that I have gotten from some of my friends who did that. Okay, but for most of us, as I have done, and practically all my peers in my department have gone through, you have to do a bunch of postdocs. Now, how many postdocs you need to do typically depend on the subject. In physics, it's practically impossible to get a position without two postdocs, each of at least 2 years. So it's pretty much now the average that you spend 5 to 6 years on PhD and then at least 4 years on postdoc, and that's when you join. Okay. Now we will talk more in detail in the next slide. Big questions around this. So I will leave that for the time being. But what I want to emphasize here, these two two categories of points regarding your time during the postdoc period, and something that is very important, and it only comes through experience. Unless you know beforehand, you wouldn't be able to anticipate. And this, I think, applies to almost all fields, and that I think is important for you to know. And because I'm fresh, like I'm just 2 years from my last postdoc experience, it's quite fresh in my memory. So I thought I should really let you know. So on the left, I have um, sort of tabulated things which are important and you should do. Okay, so to begin with, PhD is a time where you are, of course, you have publications and you have worked, but it's largely a time where you pick up things, you learn new techniques, you learn how to do research. And by the end of PhD, you have more or less learned the basic ways of doing research, and you have some papers to show where how you have fared in that learning procedure. That's why you are still a student there. But when you are in the postdoc period, you really have to publish. I mean, there is just no other way. It's publish or perish. Okay, if you cannot publish, doesn't matter how smart you are not going to reach this position. Okay, and what I wanted to really emphasize is when we talk about publishing, you have to keep in mind both quality and quantity. Both are equally important. So just as you shouldn't keep publishing junk papers just to increase the number, because eventually when you go for an interview, experts will catch you and it won't make a mark. So just quality is not going to cut it. Just quantity is not going to cut it. You should not aim for just increasing number of papers. But at the same time, in trying to do that, don't just stick into high quality work only and just forget about the quantity altogether. That is also pretty detrimental. Why I'm saying this is because of course, one should always strive to do good quality work, and sometimes doing fundamental work requires time, and it really requires effort and long-term thinking. However, when you come to an application for a faculty position, there is a sort of shortlisting that goes on at the first level, and at that level, quantity does matter. I mean, if your application has, after postdoc, 6 papers and another application has 20 papers, it doesn't matter how fantastic your 2 of those papers were, chances are you will not be shortlisted for the position. So even though you are very good and those 2 papers were probably much better than the 20 papers of the other candidate, you are just going to get sidelined. So just keep that in mind, try to strike a balance. So devote part of your work in doing something that you want, something you know is very valuable, and part of your time to maintain at least a certain number of, a number that is sort of average in your community. So number of papers varies from discipline to discipline, and even within a discipline from subfield to subfield. So just have a knowledge of what the average is and try to at least stick to it. Okay. The second part that I cannot emphasize enough, and this is something most of us don't pay attention, including me, and I've had to suffer, is networking. It's a little weird that, I mean, this is a term that is very much used in corporate sector, outside academia. And we may tend to think that in academia that's not so useful, but that is not true. You have to network. And by network, I mean you have to make yourself known. It is not enough unless you are the next Einstein. Then none of this matters. I mean, everyone knows. You are so brilliant that everyone knows by your work. Most of us, practically all of us, are not the Einsteins of this age. We are decent people who have done decent work, and we hope to do much more decent work in future. So for that, what you need to do is, it is not enough to publish, but you have to make yourself known. And how do you make yourself known? You go to conferences, you talk. If you have people who are in your area, just chat. There is no reason to think or feel shy that, maybe my work is not good enough, or what's the point, he already knows or she already knows. No, you have some idea, just go and chat for 5 minutes. Or if you have a question, pose a question. Okay, and then try to go and give talks in other departments, other institutes and universities. Talk to your friends, okay, within the department. Sometimes cross-talking between two groups within the same subfield can broaden your horizon, and it can give you new ideas to work on. Okay, so that's very important, because how this helps is that in future, and I will come to it, not only here, but as you see, you have to do, if you have to do 1, 2, or 3 postdocs, and each of them is 2-year duration, you have to keep applying for new positions. And to get those positions, you have to know people, because only then they will give you a job. Okay, so that's very important. But primarily, it becomes important here. Okay, the third thing is, as I said, you have to work well, but you need to also know how to sell your stuff. You need to package your material. Again, this is very weird. You might think, at least when I was in the beginning time of my PhD, I never thought these, I was much more starry-eyed and much more idealistic, and you really don't know the importance of how important it is to package what you know. And I mean, at least people, students who are in their final years of PhD, at least by now, at least you know that in order to get into good journals, the much more top tier journals, it is not just enough to do good work. You also have to write that paper very well. And that is what I mean packaging. So you need to be able to know how to highlight the most important aspect of your work. And oftentimes, not oftentimes, but sometimes what happens is the inspiration behind the work that actually interested you the most may not be the same that actually sells the work most. Okay, so you had something in mind and you started working and you got some very nice results, and it corroborated your understanding and what you've set out as your goal. But then in the process, something might come out which is much more sellable, much more shiny. Okay, so then don't hesitate to, don't think that trying to refocus your work and trying to emphasize on that aspect, which is much more hot these days, is selling you short. No, go forward and highlight that, because the chances are that will get your paper published in that top tier journal. And similarly, it also comes to giving a talk and generally interacting with people. By this, I do not mean that you just go and use buzzwords and just use, just sell without something to support you. Any serious person will see through you. That's not the point, because if you do that, then you are just going to ruin your career. That's not the point. The point is to do good work, but then also take that effort to make sure that the work is presented well. This is what I'm trying to say, that presentation is important. And finally, I think this is also something that most of us tend to do, is we always think that, oh, if I just got one more paper or something that will have more impact, then that will give me a better chance to apply. Don't do that. Start applying early. Okay, don't wait for your best work to come out, because you might never know what is the requirement on the other side. You are all guessing at some point. For example, what you think is your best work may not be the requirement in the job profile. So it doesn't harm to start early. And that applies for trying here as well as here. Okay, anytime you want to look for a job, so after PhD you want to have first postdoc position, you're looking for a job, start applying early. Okay, don't wait in the last minute and then you are completely stressed out and maybe you don't have a position or anything. So those are the things that you need to do actively and consciously. And here are some of the things that are also very important, much soft things which are not usually told that often, but very important, and you need to keep those in mind if you want to get down this path. And the 3 things are as follows. First is mental health. This is a stressful time. There is no other way of putting it. And why is it stressful? It is stressful for a variety of reasons. The first reason is during PhD, you have a larger time frame. Okay, you have 5 to 6 years to work on your thesis and work on something. So if something goes wrong, you have a cushion time to jump back and do something new and still get something out. Okay, plus you have a supervisor who is really responsible for what you're doing. I mean, he or she is guiding you and you are sort of doing the work in the beginning, just following him. him or her. And finally, towards the end of PhD, you will have some idea where you will be able to chip in. your own way of doing things. But when you are here, it's not that you are expected to be completely independent. That's not, no one expects, at least in subjects like physics, which are so vast that honestly, by the time you are done with your PhD, you are not a super expert in any field. You still need a lot of experience, okay? This may not apply to other fields, but what is for sure is that there is some amount of independence that is expected here, okay? For example, your prospective supervisor could give you an idea or a field or something that he or she has been working on in his group or her group, but then you are supposed to take those ideas and then push. Okay, if you're, for example, an experimentalist, you are supposed to even guide other PhD students and get a project rolling. Not as much of that happens in theory because usually groups are smaller, but still some amount of independence is required. So that's one thing. Already there is a little bit of change in role that you have to play. Second aspect is, unlike the 5 or 6 years, the average time in each postdoc is 1 year. 2 years. It can be 1, it can be 3, but the average is 2. And typically it takes 9 months to a year to get a position, starting from an application to actually securing one, which means that you technically have, from joining a postdoc, practically 1 year to produce and publish something so that you have something to show to get the next postdoc or the next job, okay? And that is tremendously stressful because there is less room for error at this point, okay? And finally, as I've written here, this is the time, this is your late 20s, early 30s, where typically you are expected to, get your family, start a family. You have a partner or you have a spouse. Many of them have kids, and that adds to the complexity. You are not as free as when you were a student, because most of the students here are independent. You are free to do anything. You have your own life, but that's not it. You have become a sort of, as we usually call, in a jovial way, 2-body, 3-body problems start arising. And those can be very stressful as well, because particularly if your partner or your spouse also have their own career equally as yours, chances are you won't be able to stay together. And those things really affect a lot, especially when you are in such a stressful situation and you have to also manage the expectations of the family. It can become very hectic and very stressful. So you need to keep those things in mind, so that you know how to handle. There should be honest conversation within your family members how to handle this time. And finally, I think the third point applies especially for all of you, because you are doing your PhD in India and not abroad. Hierarchy here is more, as we all know. This is much less in usually abroad, which doesn't mean that there is any less respect. It is how that respect is manifested. For example, here, typically you are used to calling supervisor sir or madam. If you go abroad for your postdoc, typically that changes to a first name basis, and that is weird. It takes time to adjust. But what it really means is that you have to redefine your attitude towards working. You need to understand that you are working with someone and not for someone. And this is very important to adopt that attitude, because that will help you, have that independence that is required, so that finally you can reach this position where you are now really an independent PI with your own research team. Okay. All right. So that sort of, I think, covers what I wanted to say, generally speaking, which should apply to anyone who wants to go down that path. This is the slide where I have a few questions. So Jadupati sent me a bunch of questions that many of you have asked. And I have bunched them according to the theme. So these questions pertain to the postdoc. This question pertains to getting a faculty position, and these two are outside academia. And Jodhupati told me that after I'm done with this, we can have a live session where you can then ask me more questions, and I'll be happy to answer. Okay. So for the postdoc, some of the questions were, who should look for a postdoc and what is the postdoc position? Well, I have already answered those. It's basically a temporary position where you are a researcher with some independence, and it is typically used to gain more research experience before you can become a full-fledged PI or a professor or a faculty at an institute where research is important, not just teaching, something like IIT Bombay. Okay. Now, there are many questions about the procedure here. So let me touch upon a few of them. So first is, someone asked me about selection, how to approach an interview. Is it essential to secure a host institution or lab before applying to fellowships? Suitable time to apply for PDF? What are the various postdoc fellowships in different countries? And does the place matter for PDF or India or abroad? So let me answer this first. Because every one of you here are doing your PhD here in India, and if you really want to, so first of all, chances are if you want to get a position, a faculty position, you will come back to India, because getting a position abroad by doing your PhD in India is extremely difficult. It's not unheard of. I know a couple of people, but it's very difficult. Okay. You have to be extraordinary, or you have to build some real connections during your postdoc. So it's safe to assume that most of you will want to come back and settle back in India. So in respect to that, this question, the answer is yes, it does matter. And I would suggest try at least some experience abroad, because it counts when you apply for a faculty position. It doesn't mean that you are going to do any less work here as a postdoc. That's not the point. There are lots of good researchers here as well. The point is that that exposure helps, and often people in the selection committee, they want that exposure, because you are aware now how the Indian research system works, and then if you have an exposure from the system outside, then what you will bring as a faculty candidate, you can enrich the department more, whichever department you're going to join. So this is important. Okay, try to get one position outside. About selection, this really depends, and host institution, basically how to get this postdoc. There is no simple answer. All my answers are going to be from the perspective of physics, and even then it depends on the country. So I have experience both from US and from Europe, France, and I can tell you those places. For example, I won't be able to tell you how it works in East Asia, let's say Korea or Japan. But at least in US, what happens is there aren't that many postdoctoral fellowships per se. Most of the bulk of the postdocs happen on an individual grant. Okay, so some researcher, some PI there has his or her own grant, and then you just need to write to that person, express interest, and then that's how it goes. It's a very individual one-to-one basis. There is no clear-cut structure that you need to follow in order to land you a job. That doesn't happen. So essentially, if you want to go to US for a postdoc, one thing is you just have to write to a lot of people, just unsolicited emails. Okay, that's one. But more often than not, especially for your first postdoc after PhD, almost 90% of the time it will happen through your PhD supervisor, because after your PhD, you are not that well known in the community. You don't know that many people. Again, I'm talking about an average candidate. There are always exceptions. Okay, and for them, things are easy. But I'm talking about an average candidate like me who had to go through this. And an average candidate would typically get the first postdoc by using the contacts of their supervisor, okay, PhD supervisor. So that is the easiest way to get contacts. And then, of course, you can just look up people that you would be interested in working with and just write to them emails. And that's the easiest way. Same thing applies in Europe as well, except that in Europe, there are probably slightly more fellowship, like proper fellowship opportunities. For example, in the European Union, there is this Marie Curie fellowships. In UK, there is the Newton Fellowship and some other fellowships as well. For these, typically the procedure is indeed to find a host institution. But again, for that, you need to write to an individual, some professor there who you want to work with, and then they will support your candidature. They will support your application. Okay, so you need to write to that professor to begin with. In the US also there are some fellowships, but they are extremely difficult to get. My understanding is from India, if you're aiming at postdoctoral fellowships, it's I think it's slightly easier to get in Europe than in US, because in the US it's so saturated. Typically, people within US get circulated. Again, that doesn't mean you cannot get. It's just a little bit of hard, slightly harder. At least that's what my observation is in my subject. Okay. What else? Suitable time to apply? I would say at least 9 months before your current position ends. So if you expect to graduate from PhD, let's say next year, sometime January or something, start applying now. And this also applies when you are switching postdocs. So after your first postdoc, if you want to go to a second postdoc, again, start applying 9 months, at least 9 months before, okay, before it ends. Okay, I think I've covered most of these. And now there's two more specific questions about postdocs. So I want to know about the opportunities for theoretical physics PhDs. I'm not sure exactly what you mean. So if it means staying within academia, then it's a very standard procedure. As I just mentioned, you just go through postdoc and then apply for a faculty position. Are you thinking about other opportunities from theoretical physics? Excuse me, I'm in the middle of a webinar. If you're thinking about other options, so people from theoretical physics, one of the things is they can go to finance, for example. That's a very widely used path, at least in the US. And generally, or of course, you can go to the computer related modeling. Anything that requires modeling is open for theoretical physics PhDs. But typically, the best jobs that these people with theoretical background that they get from high profile places are typically in the finance sector. And opportunities in theoretical biophysics and increasing chances. So this is not my area, so I would strongly advise you talk to my colleagues who do biophysics, for example, Professor Amitabo Nondi and Anirban Sai and Raghu, people like this. I'm sure they will be able to give you very nice suggestions. Okay, let me move on to the next one, which is faculty with research, how the publication number matters for an assistant professor job in NIT or IIT after postdoc. So again, I don't think there is a universal criterion that is used across the board for any department. But in our department, in physics, typically, as I said, there is a minimum threshold that you should have, okay? Number of papers. That is just shortlist. And after that, typically what happens is the number of papers count in shortlisting candidates when there are lots of candidates. Once that shortlist has happened, then typically the number doesn't matter that much, because then you will be invited, you will give a talk, they will interact in person, and that's what really matters, really. So I would say publication number is more of a shortlisting criterion. Again, on an average, doesn't mean it is used everywhere, but from my experience, on an average, that's how it works. Oops, sorry. And the final, sorry, I think the screen sharing went off. Can someone please?
Hi, sir. Yeah. What's the problem?
I think the screen sharing went off, and I cannot find the screen for Zoom anymore. Just
Can you look at the below panel? There is share option, I think.
Yeah, I can see your photo, but it's stuck. I mean, it doesn't. Okay, I think I got it again. Let's see. Okay. The final thing is outside academia, placement opportunities in industries as researchers. So as I said, for theoretical people, typically finance and software can work. Oh, there is one thing that I found very interesting. I had a friend, in fact, I know a few who have chosen this path from engineering background. So in the US at least, someone who did his PhD in, I think, aerospace or mechanical, and then they went into patent law. So what that means is that, for example, something like a patent office, a big law firm which specializes in patents. Now, someone, they need scientists and engineers to evaluate those patents. The law can only then kick in, okay? And there they really need people who are at least have a PhD. They need experts because these are real research results which they have to evaluate in order to file a patent. And those are can be very rewarding in many ways because you have a bit of not bit, but you have a lot of science and engineering that you have to go through, but you also have a very good salary and all your corporate stuff if you are into that kind of life. So that's something one of the ways which is not very conventional, but I think would be interesting for some of you. That's one. Finance is, of course, there. And then, of course, anything that is related to modeling. So, for example, I had at Georgia Tech, when I was a postdoc, one of the graduate students there, he finally ended up taking a job in Mathematica. Okay. And another guy went and took a job in FBI, like their investigative agency. Right, because so what they're essentially using is their skill to model and understand and analyze. Okay, that's what is being used. So there are options where even as theoretical people, whether in science or engineering, you can go and use your expertise. And if you're an experimentalist, of course, there are a lot more options, industries for like directly using your expertise. And someone who does require PhD is, for example, all these electronic industries like Intel and IBM and all. They all take a lot of people with PhD backgrounds, both in science and engineering. A ton of my friends are in that, in those fields. Okay. Okay, and finally, I want some thoughts on being an entrepreneur after completing a PhD in theoretical high energy and astrophysics. So this is honestly a question that I have no clue about. But we have an entrepreneur cell here. So I think you should talk to some of those people because they are much more equipped to give you an honest answer. Okay. All right. So I think I'll stop there. Those are some of my thoughts. And I would love to hear from you, and I will try to give you answers as best as I can. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, sir. So before I move to take the question, so I just want to make an announcement. That is that this is a series of talk. Okay, so we are calling different professors from different backgrounds, departments who have done postdoc in Europe and US, UK. Okay, so these different countries. So they will also give and suggest and share their thoughts about the postdoc and the opportunities. So for the next topic, we'll share all the things when we are going to make the other professors for this webinar. Okay, so now I will request all of you. So if you you want to ask question, so please ask one by one so that we can take accordingly. And also in chat box, you can ask question, and I will unmute one by one, and you can ask question lively. Okay, let me check. Yeah, so Ekta. So I have unmuted Ekta. Can you ask the question?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yes. Ask the question.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Hidil. That was a nice talk. And so I'm also about to I'm also in the year of kind of finishing my PhD, moving towards my pre-synopsis and all. So right now, like everybody has this question. I don't know how much difference it's going to make post-pandemic while applying to, European institutes or US institutes for a postdoctoral position. Can you comment on that?
So, well, the honest answer is we have to see. I mean, no one really knows. But it may not be that bad because, so the first thought was, of course, because of the financial situation, chances are that money will decrease and there will be less openings for positions. But however, I read the other day that because of this COVID-19 situation, for example, in the US, they have actually now realized the importance of research in basic science and engineering. And the Congress there is trying to increase the funding for NSF, which is National Science Funding. So
Okay.
it might just completely work in another way. It might so happen that actually this becomes a blessing for people like you, and the funding is increased and more positions are open. So which way it will go, I really don't know. You'll have to see, and I think it will get clearer in the next 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I have another question.
Just to complete that thought, in
Yeah.
Europe, from what I have understood, European style is less. It fluctuates less with the market situation, unlike the US. So even if things go bad because of the financial situation, it is likely that US will be less affected. So the usual fellowships will remain open.
Okay. Yeah, and I have another very small question, which is like a very common question. So if like not so you said that there is a very crucial role played by your supervisor,
Right.
your PhD supervisor, because that the the contacts which your PhD supervisor has can actually help you in getting known to different places for pursuing a better postdoctoral position. But in case if I mean, I don't know. I don't wish to say that here, but like it's a valid question that if not everyone is, getting that kind of a push from all the supervisors. So in that case, I mean, what are the chances that we'll end up having a good postdoc position? I mean, how much does it?
Yeah, I think I understand your question. So, well, there are two ways. The hard way is then try yourself or get hold of someone. For example, it is not just your supervisor that you know at this level. You may know a collaborator or some other people in your field, also within India, who can help you in that respect. You can use their help to get contacts and references. For example, you will take at least 3 references, right? So you at least have 2 more people who can help you in getting those contacts. So that's one. That's one answer. The other answer is, suppose you are in a situation that really it's not working out. None of your references are working out, or they don't have that many contacts. That's possible. Then one option is do the first postdoc within India and pick somewhere where you know you will get a push from that place so that that sort of compensates. You see what I mean?
Yeah, so I think I have unmuted. I will take other questions which they have written in the chat box. Okay, so those who are waiting, I will reach to you, but just I will take a couple of questions from chat box and then I will come to you. So,
Sure.
sir, some question is that, yeah. So, question is, could you give some point on postdoc research proposal? How involved is the PI in drafting that? So, like basically asking about the postdoc research proposal.
I understand. So honestly speaking, it is not that important in my opinion. Unless it is for a very prestigious fellowship, because then you are expected to be independent, and then that really counts. What happens after your PhD, the first postdoc, is you are mostly going to work on your prospective supervisor's project. So they are really trying to see whether how much you have gained in your PhD experience, how much technique and understanding and learning, and how much of that will be useful in doing what they have in mind. So it doesn't mean it is not important, but I wouldn't attach that much importance to it. So write just, so some of the pointers are, for example, you just write what you have done, specify what you have gained, what kind of expertise you have in doing your PhD, how that fits into the scheme of that person. That is important to show. And then just, as a general idea, you just spend a paragraph saying, these are some of the possible problems that I would like to work, just to show that you have some ideas in your mind. You are just not going to rest on the supervisor's thing, but also let them know that you are willing to work on other stuff, not just what you have written, if they have something else in mind. So be open. That's typically the way to go.
Okay. So next question is from Bharat. So he has asked the question. I think you have also answered that how the postdoc scenario will change post-COVID.
Yeah, that's a very difficult question to answer. I already answered. Yeah, let's just wait and see.
Yeah. Okay. So I will take one more question from chat box. Then I will move for those who have already raised the hand. So isn't the age become a stressing factor too? How to deal with that?
Is what stress?
Age. So it's like the question is that isn't the age become a stressing factor too? How to deal with that?
I'm not sure I understand. So age as
Okay.
a
Yeah.
what
It's age. Like so. What I understand that question is that as we do postdoc and all these things, so like
you
it's
get older
almost
and
30.
older.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course it is. That's exactly what I said. Of course it's a no. I mean, so you have to understand. Like, see, whenever you talk about stress, it essentially means there is some expectations which you're not able to meet. Okay, so if you are one of those people, you just like traveling around and have fun, and then you like, that freedom, then it really wouldn't matter much. But if you have some, obligations, especially with respect to family, either your own family, spouse, children, or your parents or some extended family, then of course it will become stressful because you need a job and so on and so forth. Yes, it is, and you have to be able to handle it.
Okay. So I'm taking question of Abhilasa. So yeah. So I'm unmuting her. Yeah.
Okay.
Abhilasa. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Can you ask the question, Abhilasa?
Thank you, Jatit. Actually, my question was taken up by Ekta that post-pandemic situations, how good it is to do first postdoc in India and then look up for opportunities in India itself. If I already have some experience of foreign internships during my PhD. So a takeover from Ekta's question.
Yeah, that's perfectly okay. As I said, you just need some exposure from outside to help in your applications later. Uh, when you want to do it, it's up to you. It's perfectly fine to do your first postdoc here and then go.
Okay. So next question is from Kusan. Yeah. Please ask the question.
Yeah, good evening. I want to ask regarding the career opportunities. Suppose if
Sorry, I can't hear you very well. It's not.
hello, am I
Yeah.
audible now?
Yeah, slightly louder, please.
Yeah, hello. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so my question is, suppose after like PhD or postdoc, if we want any position in the government ministry, like an advisory for like policy making and everything, then like how should we like is there any other prerequisite or like just how to get into some government
Oh,
advisory?
I'm not really sure. I don't have much idea how to do that.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Next question is from Rema. Please ask the question.
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. So I am. I mean, I'll be completing my PhD soon, and I'll be looking for postdoc opportunities. And one of my major concern is because I have a child. So there are few countries which I'm looking into, like US, there is Europe, and probably Australia. So so which, from your experience or your friend's experience, which would you suggest is good for a good for with a work-life balance among
Work-life
these?
balance any day is Europe. Europe is much better.
Okay.
It's just a very simple answer. US is very much more demanding in terms of work.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, next question. I don't know the name, but I am unmuting. Yeah, it's 81B25. Please
Hi,
question. Ask the
sorry,
question.
am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Hi, sorry, this is Vinay here. I'm from electrical department. First of all, thank you for the insight, Dr. Paul. I wanted to know whether by any chance pre-PhD experience, does it count anywhere applying for faculty positions?
Not really, no.
Okay, okay.
I mean, what kind of experience do you
So,
need? Projects and stuff?
actually, I have 4 years of experience, out of which 2 years I have spent in industry and couple of years in a state college honored academic position.
Oh, I see, I see. Okay, so in that case, so you're okay. So what kind of things are you looking at? Are you looking for a faculty position in a place like IIT?
Yes.
So in that case, because you are in the engineering department, that industry experience might count, might help you. But at state level college teaching, I don't think is going to help you anymore.
Okay, I see. So the industry might be counted. That's what you're saying.
Depending on what you did, I mean, if someone worked let's say in Infosys coding something, that doesn't help. But if you worked in R&D sector in some good, like IBM or something,
I see.
of course that will count.
Okay, I see. I see. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, next is Prakash Singh. So yeah, so I just making a common announcement that when you ask the question, please unmute yourself and lower the hand so that we can get an idea who is asking. So next is Prakash. Could you please ask?
Hi, Professor.
Hi.
Fantastic talk. I learned so many things. Thank you so much for that. Somebody asked this question about writing research proposals. I am sort of, I have a follow-up question on that. So how specific should we be while writing these research proposals with our own ideas?
I couldn't understand.
Yeah, so my question is, while writing these research proposals, how specific should we be in terms of our own ideas, vis-a-vis trying to align with prospective groups' research ideas?
Yeah.
How to strike a balance if, since in most of the cases, there is no clear guidelines as to what do they expect. So
as I said, it's not that important. I mean, like, don't put so much emphasis. Like, from PhD to postdoc, it's almost unheard of that someone has been disqualified because the research proposal was bad. It doesn't work like that. It is so. Just feel free to comment on what are the things you can do, align them with your prospective supervisor, and just say that you are open to doing new things. Keep that, at least say that, so that you are open to doing new things, and that should work. It's not that, not that.
Thank you so much. Again, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, next question is from Nirvan.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul, for the wonderful talk. I just have a question that given the current steep competition in applying to IITs and other central universities or NITs that we are currently facing, so how are the new private universities that are popping up? I mean, salary-wise, work environment, switch to that. So, is it a feasible option after completing PhD? Thank you.
So, wait. So, the question is, you want to apply for a private university directly after PhD, or you want to go through the postdoc?
Yeah, I mean, if possible, directly after.
So see, the point with private university, as far as I understand, is because it's a much more recent phenomenon in India, there is not, the benchmark is not very uniform. Okay, you have places like Shiv Nadar and Ashoka and all, which are supposedly decent places, and there you will need some postdoc experience and they expect you to do some research. But there are other places which are just teaching places, honestly, and then you can just go in, you know, if you can convince them, crack their interview, you just go through. So this is a tricky question to answer. I don't have an answer that probably will satisfy you, honestly, because it really depends on the place.
Okay, so before I move to those who are raising hand, I will take a quick question from chat box. So the question is that what are the job opportunities except academic for theoretical physicists in India?
That is a good question. Unfortunately, I don't know the answer because I really don't know. I don't know what theoretical physicists can do in India. What are the opportunities? I know it in the US context, and some of them I mentioned, but in India, I really don't know.
Okay, so yeah, so I am now again taking question from chat box. Do you think that it matters if you are not a fresh PhD graduate when applying postdocs? That is, if there is a gap of an year or so. From Anjali.
Well, it depends why that gap is. I mean, for example, if it's for a woman who took a year off, you know, to start a family or something, raise a child, that's perfectly okay. Especially in the Europe, they actually have opportunities which sort of incorporate these things. So let's say there is an age limit that will be relaxed, and such gaps doesn't count against you at all. If that is not the case, let's say you took the gap for industry, as I said, someone asked me earlier, if that is a pertinent experience to what you are going to do in postdoc, then it shouldn't matter at all. Yeah, I wouldn't say for postdoc it really should count against you, as long as you are on top of your game in what you want to do. Yeah.
Okay, so we have got next question from so it's crazy question that how to deal with a professor who is lazy. It's supervisor, sorry. How to deal with a lazy supervisor?
Well, the short answer is sucks to be me. The long answer is, if there is still time, try to see if you have another supervisor. But there are other ways. For example, you have RPC, right? This progress committee. You can talk to other people and try to figure out ways. So, for example, let's say there is another person who also works in related field, and then you can collaborate. You know, you can do something that you do with both of them together and use the expertise of other person to get your ball rolling. Okay, so you just have to use those circumvents, I would guess. Yeah.
Okay, so sir, next question is like there are so many questions, so I am trying to finish as much as possible, as early as possible. So the question is that you said to apply early for postdoc position. If I apply 1 year before, does it become weird to ask them in email if they have any postdoc position available in their lab after 1 year since?
Not at all. In fact, that is the way to do it. Just send an email saying whether they have a position open or not, and you are interested. That is exactly what you do.
Okay. Yeah, so next question is there are 2 entry-level schemes for assistant professor jobs at various institute, one among which requires no experience. How to strengthen our CV in order to get into those positions right after PhD?
Well, the simple answer is you have to be very good in your PhD. So you need to satisfy, so you have to have good publications and you just have to be extraordinary. That's why someone will consider you right after PhD. So you have to stand out amongst your peers. It's as simple as that.
Okay. I'll take one more question from chat box, then I'll move to those who are raising hand. If someone wants to switch to some other field, does it make your application weak?
Not necessarily. Actually, well, it depends what you mean by switching. So I'm assuming you don't mean like going from physics to economics or something for your postdoc. That won't work. But at least abroad, this is not frowned upon, and sometimes it's also encouraged. In fact, something that I have done, for example, in my life is even within your own subfield, it's a good idea to switch a little bit from different, one postdoc to another, because that broadens your experience and your scope, and gives you a much more broader perspective, not only a perspective, but also freedom to then apply for positions. You can say that these are the different areas that I'm expert in, and I can connect all of them. So in a place which may not be looking for one particular aspect, but could have an opening, like could have a focus point in another subfield, you could still qualify. So it's a good idea to at least change a little bit. Don't keep doing the same thing that you did in your PhD. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So last question from chat box, that is doing PDF necessary in top 500 ranked college?
College?
Yeah, I think it's a universities. So
top 5, sorry, top, I mean, we have, I think, how many universities? So no, I'm not getting the question. So
I think it's QS ranking.
Sorry, say that again.
It's QS ranking, that top 500.
QS ranking.
Yeah.
So you mean all over the world then?
Yeah.
Oh, of course. I mean, you wouldn't, even doing postdocs is not enough. You have to be good after you do the postdocs.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll take question from those who are raising hand quickly.
Again, but
yeah,
just to qualify that statement, it depends on the subject. I'm talking from our physics perspective. As I mentioned, there are subjects where you don't, postdoc is not.
Okay.
That's not the norm of that field. So in that case, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah. So next question is from Prasant. Yeah, please ask the question.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, thank you for the insightful presentation, Professor. I actually wanted to ask that you said we should apply 1 year before we finish our PhD for the postdoc application, but I checked some of the application procedures like Marie Curie or even the Commonwealth scholarships. They require us to at least submit our PhD before we even submit the application for the postdoc. So I'm a little confused how we should apply 9 months before, when the application essential is to have a PhD submitted.
Right. So what I meant is, of course, for fellowships which are very structured, there is no doubt. You know exactly when to do and what to do. Right. It appears, let's say, once a year, and you have to do exactly at that time. So what I meant was going outside of fellowships, where you don't have well set machinery to apply for these, and you are soliciting. You're writing to people, going to conferences, then using your supervisor's contact. That should start early on. Because it could happen, for example, that person, may not have a grant at that time, but something could open up in future. And then that person could say, oh, well, something will open up. And then why don't you write to me in 6 months? But at least then you know that there is an option, as opposed to you had no option at all if you didn't even ask. And you had some other offer from somewhere else which you don't want that much. Right? So that is what, you just use that time more judiciously. It just gives you more preparation time. That's all I meant.
Okay, so I'll next question, take question from Suranjana Gupta. Okay, please ask the question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Please.
Okay. Thank you for the talk, sir. It was very interesting and very eye-opening. I just wanted to, there was one clarification. This is actually in continuation with Ekta's question, where you had answered that the postdoc, if it is not possible to do it right now abroad, then we could look at one postdoc, the first postdoc within India, and then look for an experience abroad. Is that, did I follow that right?
Yeah,
Because at one point,
totally.
so
But
it doesn't matter that.
Sorry, go ahead.
So it doesn't matter that the first postdoc is not abroad. I mean, one of the postdocs.
No, it does not matter at all. Absolutely not. No.
Okay. And the
But
other thing,
what I'm trying to say is, when you choose that first postdoc, if you have to do it here, make sure that that is a place which will open up that option, at least next time.
Okay. And the other thing is that.
Go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. The other thing is that in institutes like IITs, IIS, SCR, faculty positions have an age limit. Is that right?
Yes, there are. So the usual age limit is 35. So the application has to get in. It's not a fast rule, but typically if you don't follow that rule, then you are in an exceptional category, and then you have to stand out again. I mean, someone in the committee will have to say this is an extraordinary applicant. That's why you are going to bend the rule. But typically, I would suggest if you want to do it, you do it before 35.
So we'll take question from Subhadeep. Please ask.
Jodhupati, I mean, this screen seems to be like a never-ending Pandora's box. So at some point, I think we have to stop.
Yeah. So we will take 3-4 questions more, then we will stop. Is it okay? Yeah. Please ask the question. Yeah, Subhadeep. You're not audible.
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
All right. So thank you so much for presentations.
No, actually, you are not very audible here. Your voice is breaking up.
All right. That might be probably due to poor connection. Anyway, can you hear me now?
It's not clear.
Sorry, I'm not able to hear you.
Can you ask the question in chat box? Yeah, you are not audible. So I'm muting. Please ask the question. Yeah. So next question is from Sarmila. I'm unmuting. Yeah. Please ask the question.
Hello.
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Hello, sir. Thank you for the insightful talk. So my question is, like, as you suggested that earlier, someone has asked that if we want to switch our field from our PhD area to a slightly different, it's not a field change, but like if I'm an experimentalist and I want to switch to theoretical, so like in the application, what kind of point should I highlight? Because as I have to pitch my proposal that I need that position, so what kind of things should I address or put into my application to get such position if I want to make this switch?
So which subject are you in?
So I'm in chemical engineering department, and my field is like systems biology. So I have experience of both experimental as well as theory.
So so it's good. So you already have an experience. So you just say that I have had both experiences, and now this is what I would like to pursue more. So that's exactly what you do. You just write that. I mean, the idea is to convince that person that you are ready for that. This is the basic idea. Okay. So someone has an opening and some problem in mind. And the question is, in what you write or how you talk, the idea is to convince, and not just convince them, but yourself also be convinced that you are actually, you fit into that position. Because if you just go there and you are not ready, as I said, it will be a very hard time for you because things roll very fast. Okay? It's just that. That's it. And as I'm saying, in a postdoc, what you write, also the other thing is don't write too long, what is this called? These statements. Okay, no one has patience to read those. So be succinct, to the point. Sometimes one page is more than good enough. Just highlight something that you want to be the main focus, because the most important part of it, whether you will get the job or not, will come later through interview. That person will talk to you, and then you'll have a discussion, and that's when yeah. So this is just sort of a shortlisting thing.
Sir, please, I will take 2 more rapid questions and then we will wrap up.
Yes, yeah. I see on the screen there are 7 such screens, and in each 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 25 people. So 100 people waiting. So I think by the time this ends,
okay. So yeah, it's
will be eradicated.
Yeah. So Vijay Sankar, please ask your question.
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Good evening, sir. Sir, is exposure to experimental work during PhD preferred over simulation work while applying for postdoc?
Not really. There's nothing like that. It's really. By the way, what's your area? What subject?
I'm in energy science engineering department.
No,
solar thermal. I'm working on solar thermal.
So again, it could be very specific. Maybe you are asking the question from an angle where the field is such that it values experimental work more. So I cannot comment on that. But in general, in physics, for example, and in many other basic science and engineering subjects, that is not the case. It really matters whether you are good at what you do. That's it.
Okay, so possibly the last question I am taking, it's Vishal. So please ask the question quickly.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, you are. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So I am entering into my final year. Maybe in the 4th APS I have to give now. So I'm working on material chemistry. So my question is, because I'm the I don't have any publications yet. They are above, like still in the writing process. So, but because I have to approach any professors for the PDF from now itself, I have to start looking for, and if possible, if I can write to them, I have to write. Then how can I approach without any publications? And due to the lack of publication, I couldn't able to go to any international conferences also yet. So due to that, networking ways also, I have little bit less exposure in the network.
So in your case, I would suggest your best option is through your supervisor.
Okay.
If you, that's the best, because then sometimes it happens, like, maybe you are working in a field, maybe you had hiccups in the beginning. Happened that could very well, things didn't work.
I was the first student of my supervisor, so
well, that's a different issue that I cannot comment, but it's not unusual to be in a situation that you are in. It does happen. And then what could happen is your supervisor could actually explain in his or her letter that what was the situation, why you ended up in a situation that you are in, that it's not a disqualifying factor that you don't have a paper, but some things are in the pipeline and there was a reason why it took time. And then I have seen people get postdoc even in your situation. So it's not the end of the world. But I would suggest talk to your supervisor. That person is the best shot at this point.
Sir, we are taking last question. Please consider it. Because he has, okay. So it's Saurabh. Please ask your question.
Hi, so I'll be very quick. My first question is about IITs not wanting inbreeding in professors. So currently I'm a PhD in my 3rd year, IIT Bombay, and my goal is to become a professor in IIT Bombay again. And I cannot travel abroad for a postdoc. So how do I compensate for this where IITs don't encourage inbreeding?
So again, that statement that you just said, it's a general rule. I mean, not a rule, but I would say a general unwritten rule that is followed. But it doesn't mean that it cannot be bent. And the reason again that it will be bent is only if you're acceptable. That's when things are taken into consideration. And the other thing that you asked me, if that is the situation that you are in a position not to be able to go abroad, again, it is not a disqualifying factor. You can go to good places and work with good people who are of international standard. meaning the work that comes out will be of a quality that you would have gotten anyway if you had traveled abroad. There are places in our institute in IISc, there are people who are of that caliber, so try to work with them. You will need that reference from them, that this is a person who is of the same quality as any other candidate. So don't go by others.
All right. The second quick question was with regards to networking. Normally, I need to do it on a global scale. So what platforms would you advise, like LinkedIn ID and all, or are other means possible?
No, purely personal.
Purely personal, okay.
Yes. None of
so
this.
That would happen to happen through my professor because I am not at a global level at all.
Even within India, it doesn't harm. I mean, networking doesn't always have to be global. I mean, you start with what you have here and then you expand.
Okay. Thanks so much for taking my question.
Sure, no problem.
So there are many questions, but we have to stop here. So I will stop, and so let's thank the speaker once again for the wonderful talk, and he has tried to answer all the questions we have taken. But you know that this is a very vast topic, so it's not possible to answer all your queries in a single day. That's why we are making this as a series of talks. So I think if we have missed your question, please you can ask the question in the next talk. And one more thing is that we are really sorry that our platform, this maximum room capacity exceeded with all the numbers. So that's why we made the live. So from the next time we also share the FB live at the same time. So okay, so sir, like thanks to you for the wonderful talk, and I will also thank all my team members who have worked hard for this, because without them it was not possible to arrange this type of event. And especially the event team of RSF who has worked hard, all my EC and DR members, and now also all the people who have joined here to listen the talk. And I will let you know when the next talk is, and I will share the details. So again, thanks, sir, and thanks all of you. Stay safe.
Yeah, just a final few remarks. So thank you, Jadupati. I think it's a very nice initiative that you guys have taken up. And thank you everyone for your wonderful questions. I hope I could help a little bit in whatever way possible. But more than that, I am sorry for the innumerable people that I can see on my screen whom I could not answer. I apologize for that, but as you see, I'm constrained for time. But the other thing is there are a lot more coming up, as Jadupati just mentioned, and it is important to also take that viewpoint. So the idea is here to get a sort of highest common denominator of all the viewpoints, because I'm giving you a perspective which could be a very specialized perspective. Listen to those other professors as well, and then get sort of some intersection among all these opinions and form an idea and pursue them. Okay. Yeah, that's all. So stay safe, sir. And hopefully I'll bump into you guys somewhere on the campus. Bye.
Okay. Thank you again, sir. Yeah.